no son should put their mother through what I put my mother through. I got home, my head was split. I wasn't able to respond. I wasn't in a state where I could understand and speak back. The next morning, I woke up with blood all over the place and I had to be told what had happened to me the night before. See, we'd won the grand final in my hockey team, the local competition, and then I got drunk. I got very drunk. And I was one of the men who didn't want to be a drinker. I didn't start drinking when my friends drank because I wanted to be different. I didn't want to go down that path. I didn't see it as a positive thing. But my self-esteem was so low that eventually I decided to drink, and I realized that I lost all of the anxiety. I lost all of the fear of judgment, and I was able to speak with girls, and I was able to enjoy myself. I was able to relax. And so I fell into the habit of alcohol. And that night when I came home with blood everywhere and had to explain to my mother the next day that I had no idea what had happened, that's when I really knew that something really was wrong with me. Something had to change. You can't use alcohol as a mask and still have a great life. And so around that time is when I didn't stop drinking exactly then, but I've drunk very little, much less since that time. But what I was looking for was a way to live with joy, a way to live that I could be proud of. And when I went and traveled, I had to go and see the world to try and find if there was a culture somewhere, anywhere, where I could experience something different, something much better. And so I went to Latin America and I wanted to learn Spanish and see what I could see over there. Maybe meet a nice girl, maybe buy some cheap land. A fantasy that probably a lot of men have had. And so I went, and it was beautiful, and I met beautiful women, and I learned about myself, and I learned to play guitar, I learned to juggle, and I learned to meet new people, and I got comfortable with myself without having to drink. And I explored ideas of how the world works, politics, economics. That was what made me. That when I went back to work in rugby, I coached a world champion team. It was partly because of the techniques, and I'm passionate about the techniques and the science of performance, but it was because I'd been through something that other coaches hadn't been through, other players hadn't been through. I had a perspective on things that allowed me to take more risks, that allowed me to test new ideas, because I had to be so flexible hitchhiking through Latin America, sleeping on floors, meeting new people as I went. That mind flexibility was forced into me by the environment that I put myself into. And so this is what I want for you. This is what I want for all young men and older men who feel like I'm trapped. This is not for me. I need something different. I need to feel something different. I need to experience something different. I need to be something different. For some, it's alcohol addiction, like it was for me. For others, it's other substances or other paths to the other side, porn, or just being lonely and being depressed and thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. The biggest danger to a man under 60 is himself, and that's not good. It's worth doing something about. Now, my life today is infinitely better than it was at that time, but I remember what it was like going through my teens with my self-esteem crushed, being part of a schooling system that didn't make any sense to me, being forced and pushed down a path towards a life that I wasn't interested in living. I had no interest in working a 9 to 5. I had no interest in following the traditional path, but I had no idea what else I could do. And that hopelessness and that anxiety was always there. Something was very wrong. And it's taken me 20 years to get to the point where I can travel the world. I have a beautiful family. I have friends all over the world. I have financial resources. But I was lucky to make it through. I was lucky to get here. That one story with the split head, there were too many of those stories. So what can I do? Well, I can show a path. And that's what I've been wanting to dissect and understand. What is it that happened to me? What is it that I did differently? How did I change? And in some ways I just look, when I left rugby league, I started a business and I started making money, and then I could travel the world. And obviously the part in rugby stuck with me of I coached a world champion team. The methods that I used were good, but I often didn't look back further to the mind flexibility that was created by learning Spanish, learning French, meeting new people all the time, hitchhiking, learning to juggle, learning to play guitar. It's really these things that were the foundation for me. And it turns out there's a framework for this called the 9 intelligences. And they're really 9 forms of genius, where if you're good in any of those 9 forms, life's going to get. So it makes sense to me that I should encourage other men to develop their genius, develop their intellect, get a basic understanding of the 9 areas and take on some small challenges that take a few minutes, a few hours, and decide to be great at something within those realms. Because that's really the tool for the freedom that people are talking about. People are talking about time, money, geographical freedom. And that's a beautiful thing. We should be thinking about time, money, and geographical freedom. But when I got time, money, and geographical freedom, and I was sitting on unrealized crypto gains, and I was in a better position than I could have ever imagined being in, I realized there was still more freedom to be had. There was something else that was needed. And the biggest thing was the freedom of having brothers around the world who you can share ideas with, share experiences with, challenge each other. That was really missing for me. And that's just one of the other areas of freedom that we don't really talk about. No one's talking about as one of the core freedoms is to be part of a village, part of a culture that you're proud of. What about the general freedom? What are the opportunities for my children? Me putting myself in that strong position, I can tell them, okay, this is what I did. But at some point you're going to step away from your father's shadow. You're going to go and look at the world. And I'm excited for my children to do that. But what if I could have a bigger and better influence on the way they went and saw the world than what I did? I was ready to risk it all. I wanted to, I often fantasized about chopping up my bank card so I would literally be broken alone in Latin America, just see what would happen to me. That's why I hitchhiked. I walked through the dangerous streets at night just thinking, well, I didn't care what happened to me because I didn't value myself, my life. I didn't have a real plan for what I could do with myself. So I was ready to risk it all. But better to risk it for something, right? So when I got to that point of ultimate abundant success beyond anything that I could have imagined, I remembered the dream that I thought about while I was in Latin America of we should have land somewhere, food grows on trees. If we got food and we got places to train, maybe a good library, what else do you need? This is what excited me, was to explore the potential athletically, but also instinctively. When I was working in an orphanage in Guatemala, 23 years old, I ended up learning all the states in America, all the locations and countries in Africa. I learned history from one of the guys there was a history buff, massive brain, Matthew Levan. And he taught me a lot of things about history that I'd never considered, I didn't know anything about. He would tell the stories, I would take notes. So this is my proof of what happened when there were no smartphones and I was living in a place with no electricity and nothing else to do, when I wasn't involved in the school, in the agriculture projects, teaching classes, playing games. Then we sat in this house and some of the guys would get stoned, but there was a lot of free time. So I put my intellect to work, which was the main thing that I was interested in doing. So there's that thing within us, that intent within us of wanting to know, wanting to explore what we're capable of, what our potential is. And maybe it's not in everyone. Maybe some people really do just want to watch the soccer and drink beer. And you can get halfway in life. 50% is free. There's the free ride bias. There's a book by Uspensky called Man's Possible Evolution. It's a brain bender. You can find it free on YouTube. Man's Possible Evolution. The Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution or something like that. You'll find it. If you don't, drop me a message if you want to check it out. But he explains that you get 50% for free. In any system, in any culture that you grow up with, you can get 50% of your potential for free. You'll learn how to survive, how to get by within that system, wherever you're born. But the other 50% you have to choose and you have to work for. If you want to experience something significantly different to what the majority are experiencing, you have to work for it. Most people are not interested in it, or they never find the connections to be able to truly explore it. In my experience, most people are curious about their potential. And I had friends learn to read as adults because I had a friend who decided to put himself back into school to learn to read because I was reading books all the time, and he wanted to understand why I was reading those books. And I've tended to have that influence on men around me that they decide I'm going to test myself. So I think it's more about the environment. I think there are more of us than we realize who don't really care that much about the football and drinking beer, don't really love watching porn and doing that stuff that much. We just don't know how to light our souls. We don't know how to get the best of ourselves out. And so we settle and we do what we have to do to be able to pay for the family. And there's moments of joy in the simple things. But there's more. And it takes the decision to explore into that 50%. What does 51% feel like? What does 52% feel like? Now I know that 100% now is not reachable for all the damage that I did to my brain. Or at least I feel it's highly unlikely at this point. The way I've been conditioned into the world, what I've done to my brain. What if there was an education system that was aimed at exploring towards that 100%? What if things had been different during my childhood? I know I got the 50% education and it's good. Life is good in most parts of the world. And it's not about hating on that. It's just the curiosity of what else is there. And to be honest, I couldn't really do it with the 50%. It wasn't for me. I knew I had to do something else, and I was willing to go to the end of the earth to find that something else. Fortunately, I met Paul Council after I had traveled the world a bunch and I'd made a bunch of money and I already coached the world champions and I'd learned to juggling guitar and all that stuff. There was still more. I still wasn't feeling like this is it. And it turned out I needed to learn a lot more about psychology and personal transformation. And that journey into understanding more about psychology and personal transformation has made all the difference for my marriage, for the way that I look at my children. And it's opened new possibilities for the future. I'm not saying it's easy in your 40s to redefine yourself and you redefine your values and you realize how many mistakes you've made, how many things you've been ignorant of, really, or just that there's so much more. But now we have these physical locations. So I got to that point of abundance, but feeling like there's something more. And even the work I was doing with Paul, it's like I want to feel what it's like to be in an immersive environment of this. So I started building villages. The concept of the village is that it's a place outside of the city where you can be around others who've made a decision to build themselves, these intelligences, to experience more freedom than was previously experienced, that was previously possible to experience. Maybe build a business around that. And maybe that could become an international network that my son could plug into one day, and that my daughter's vision for her family and future could be influenced differently by creating a strong network of families and seeing positive relationships, men who have high standards for themselves. That's what we started, and now we have a physical location in Montenegro. There's men there at the moment. I think we've had over 70 guests now. But I've never really told the whole story of what it is and why we're doing it, why I left exercise science and coaching world champion rugby players. Like normally when you coach the world champion team, you keep doing that. You know, I was coaching the best team in Australia and my salary had doubled and it was like I was making more money than I ever thought I could. I didn't make over 50 grand in a year until I was 30. So if you're in your 20s and you're in your early 20s and you're looking at what other people are doing, know that they might have been way behind where you are right now. And if you get to work today and you decide you're going to develop these intelligences and you connect up with other men who are heading in this direction, you'll be so far ahead of me by the time you're 41. It's ridiculous. And I love that. I love that I've consistently been able to encourage men to find more of themselves. So I'm building this village in Montenegro together with a local man and a few partners from within our network now. We have 30 beds, we have a gym, a restaurant, and we have potential to build a lot more there. And we have potential to buy more land, and it's infinite what can happen there. And already there are powerful transformative experiences there, but the world doesn't know that it's going on. And then we've built 5 beachfront bungalows in Vanuatu ready for the same purpose. And there's more to do there. There's more building to do. There's a lot more land. Vanuatu is an interesting one because it's like infinite fertile land for very cheap. So the country also has no income tax, no taxes, no capital gains tax. And so I'm curious of who we would become and who my children will become. And I'm curious of if there are other men who are willing to not just go after the money, because clearly there's a lot of get-rich-quick things out there. People are going to be chasing crypto pumps, and there's all these programs where you learn to drop ship and you learn to trade crypto coins, and maybe you learn to build your agency or something. And it's great because the spirit of expansion is there. The intent within the man is like, I need to work hard to get myself to a higher level of freedom. But the thing is, if the base layer is wrong, if the fundamentals are not in place, not wrong, but they're there for the 50%. They're there for you to work for someone else. The education system taught you to work for someone else. It didn't teach you how to work for yourself. It didn't teach you how to build something new, how to imagine a different reality. That's not what we were doing in the schooling system. So you're going to come up against all kinds of demons that you don't know that you have. And you're going to wonder, why is this not working for me when it's working for them? Why am I so scared of sales? Why am I so scared of talking in front of the camera? I didn't really know that talking in front of camera was such a big thing for a lot of men because I was already used to talking in front of groups, and I've been doing social media now for 10 years. But one of the biggest fears that most men I speak to have is they feel really self-conscious about speaking to camera and putting their ideas out there. Not everybody. Some have already gone through it. But that fear of expressing yourself, expressing your ideas, that's not a good way to live. That's not how it should be. So I love helping men become better. I've done it with world champion athletes. I love pushing athletic potential ahead. And I know I can organize. My challenge is to organize my thoughts and the method and the system and the philosophy so that you can implement it more authentically. When you can implement the philosophy of the self-built magical athlete, anything is possible. You can go to a level that you can't imagine right now. Team training is not designed to build stars. It's designed to build role players. The stars build themselves. They have a completely different mentality, and they get after things in a very different way to the rest, to the role-playing athletes. And it's the same for building a business. You have to attack it from a completely different life philosophy, or it's not going to happen. So now I have this opportunity to, my 23-year-old self could have gone to this place. I think I had around $10,000 saved to go and travel the world, to go to Europe and then go through Latin America. And I did it on a shoestring. But I could have afforded to have a year around uncommon men, to go to the village in Montenegro, to go to the village in Vanuatu, to visit here in Mexico location. There's men in the Mexico location right now. So this is a beautiful thing. This is something that the world needs to know about. I'm going to give you an opportunity to be a part of this network. But the challenge is that you take on the philosophy of developing these 9 areas of genius, these 9 intellects. And hopefully you've already been working hard and you've already got some serious development in some area. There's areas like music, logic, language. Chances are you're good at something. There's something that you've been putting quite a bit of time into. And if not, it's okay. There's still time. The fun is in the progression. The fun is in the change. So if that idea excites you and interests you, and the thought of going to a place where others who've engaged in that philosophy are going to be, and you're going to exchange ideas, and you get really good at teaching each other, we get really good at teaching each other, then the progression of every man is the progression for every other man. The potential of the network grows exponentially. And so it's like Bitcoin, but each coin is getting better. It's not just the network effect around the thing. We have the network effect of, okay, more people are aware of this. There's more demand to get into this network. That's going to be a good thing. But then there's also the thing of what can each unit do? What can each individual Bitcoin do? And so the fun is in each player becoming more valuable. It's now building the ultimate team. I worked with rugby teams, and it's fun when you sign a player and the player comes with a certain ability and capacity, and then I get to help them improve their footwork, improve their power, improve their catching. It's fun to improve a man to be able to play that professional sport, but it's even more fun to improve a man to think, what kind of father is this man going to become? What kind of husband are they going to become? And I see all the time dramatic changes, men telling me, I don't know if I'd still be here if we didn't have this conversation, or I wasn't planning on having children until I joined this program, or I couldn't imagine that I would ever not have to go to work, and now 6 months into working with you, I don't have to have a job. I don't see myself ever having a job again. We had that Liam Howe, one of the young men in the program now, is able to leave his job at Tesco. His goal was to make twice as much money as he made working full-time at Tesco, and he achieved that within a few months. And now his vision for the future is so much bigger. Now he was able to go to Dubai to an event. He's able to come to Mexico to my event. So it's great that young men want more for themselves, and I'm all for becoming wealthy, but there's more depth to the conversation where you become the kind of person who will always be wealthy. If you're the kind of person who's always going to have value to bring to any conversation, to any party, if you've got lots of things that you can teach other people, then it becomes a simpler process. So my goal is to develop men that are great at helping other men and children. I want there to be an option for parents to be able to say, yeah, go to this event with these men that are from this network, from Uncommon Success. This man's going to teach you about expansion. And you expand across the areas of genius, the 9 areas of genius, the 9 intelligences. What if that was an option? I met someone here on the beach in Mexico. He runs wrestle camps. 3,000 young men go to his wrestle camps each summer, probably girls as well. He makes a lot of money from it. It's a really good business, and it allows him now to be able to travel the world as well. And he's thinking about retiring in his early 40s. But what about if that education was setting him up for an amazing life? What if there was a whole other level of self-awareness? One of the 9 genius areas of genius is self-knowledge, intrapersonal skills, how well you know yourself, and interpersonal skills, how well you know others. How much could you have learnt about different personality types and predispositions if that had have been a subject that you were taking at school? What if these 9 intelligences were developed all through school in a fun and playful way appropriate to your age? Well, that's not what the free ride bias is for. That's not what the first 50% is. And I understand you don't need to go beyond that first 50%. The system is doing what it's doing. It's been okay for some people, maybe good for most if you're optimistic. But I'm curious. I can't help but be curious of how much better could it be? What would it be like if children were given that opportunity? And so we have that opportunity with the villages, and we're building more villages. I just spoke to a man today who's invested 10,000 euros so far, and he's already in a position where he can host people. He's considering buying another plot of land with a house on it, ruins that needs to be fixed for 8,000 euros, where he can build another dwelling. And he's an exceptional coach. He's an exceptional man. And men from our network are going to go to this location. It's pristine, it's beautiful. It's on an island looking out over the water. So it's almost no money. It's like most men my age in Australia are sitting on a mortgage and equity in a house that's worth 10 times what he's had to invest, 20, 30 times what he's had to invest to build a dream. And of course, it requires a network effect. He either needs to be able to get people to go to that location, or I do, or our network does, one way or the other. But he has no overheads. It's not going to cost him a lot. And he's probably going to find a beautiful wife who wants to come there with him and beautiful children. And it's going to be something like what happened 100-something years ago when people 200 years ago, when they decided that they would go to a new land of opportunity called the United States, where there was more opportunity for enterprise, there was more opportunity to create, and beautiful things were created with beautiful values. You can say what you want about current politics and foreign policy and whatnot, but most of the innovation of the world has come out of that land of the free. And there was a lot of freedom there. And there was a lot of innovation, and people came from all over the world to participate in it. And they're still trying to get in there. It's still probably the toughest country to get into legally. And that's for a reason. It's because it worked. People vote with their feet. But what would the next frontier look like? That's the question that I'm interested in answering. I've got a newborn. It's 2 months old. I'm 460 months or something. What's the best opportunity that I could give him? And then how can I prepare for his children? This is the question that interests me. What questions interest you? What would you give your life to building and to creating? So now the challenge is to increase the network effect around this project. We need around 10,000 interested men who can see, oh, this sounds pretty interesting. I like being extremely athletic. I like being more intelligent. I like eating good food. I'm not that interested in self-harm, wasting, or just sitting on the 50%, basically. If you don't want to be Homer Simpson, I'm looking for 10,000 men who don't want to be Homer Simpson, who would be willing to risk $9 is going to be the initial investment. It's probably going to go up. It's probably going to become some sort of subscription. But we need to get this critical mass of momentum of men who are like, yeah, this makes sense. I'm down. Let's risk it. Let's risk the 9. It's one Starbucks, right? Like if you're doing all the sweet stuff and that, which I'm not, but you know what I mean. So I'm looking for those men who will risk the $9. I'm also looking for men who think, yeah, I usually invest a few $100,000 a year in investments. I buy a real estate property. I buy Bitcoin. I buy bits and pieces. None of that's going to give me the experiences that I could have around other men who've got resources who want to go to these locations. The best experiences that I can imagine is having men of resources with beautiful families who are willing to continue to develop the 9 intelligences, to study, to be aware, who have families, and for those families to come together in private locations or have the village available only to that group for a period of time. Whether it's the village that I was just talking about, the one that's being built at the moment, if it's in their interests to build that location and make it even better, and it's a small fraction of what they usually invest each year, and maybe it's going to have a bigger financial return than Bitcoin or than the S&P 500, then maybe there's 100 men out there who are like, yeah, there's something to this. I'll contribute to this. I'll contribute some education. I'd be interested in leading an event at one of these places or being an attendee, being a co-host. I'm looking for those men as well, who've already done something really good that they're proud of, that have a lot of potential. Maybe they're a professional athlete at the moment. And they're like, yeah, this is good. This is a message that needs to be shared. I know any man you put in front of me who's willing to try something, I can teach them stuff. And then it's fun. I taught a millionaire Rubik's Cube the other day. He liked it. I'm good at teaching languages. I'm good at teaching music. I'm good at teaching other men to become teachers. And that's the fun thing is like when I was teaching the Rubik's Cube, I had the realization, you're going to teach this to your son. You're going to know how to do this for the rest of your life. You're going to lose that one limiting belief of like, I can't do that thing. Maybe I'm just that little extra bit of doubt. So when you accumulate self-esteem, when you accumulate self-worth, life gets better. We know from Maxwell Maltz's work that even if you think you look ugly and then you get plastic surgery and you objectively don't look ugly anymore, you can still feel ugly. You can still have that self-esteem of the ugly person. The same is true with money. I know lots of men who have money and they're not proud of themselves. They're proud of getting the money, maybe, but they know that they're not really developing. They know that they're not really excited about life. They know they still have habits that they wouldn't really want to pass on to their children. Sometimes they don't know how to play with their children. They don't know how to relate. They've lost the joy that they had as an 8-year-old or 12-year-old into the worries of the modern world. So I'm looking for those connections to build a new possibility, a new future together with those people as well. Maybe it's just a week a year. Instead of going to that 5-star resort for one of your holidays, you go to a location like this around other men who choose to pass on skills. What could become of that? This was the wild idea of Uncommon Success that I launched 2 years ago. But I've become a bit jaded and a bit sad over the time of like, why don't people get this? But I think I haven't really explained it that well. And it's a bit confusing of like, well, why are they doing villages? And one thing that's probably come up, and maybe it's a trigger point, is like, why men? I'm a man. I've worked with men. I understand men. I'm good at helping men. I always had my program open to women as well. And I would have around 3 to 5% of women join the program. Most of them were more interested in marrying other women than marrying men, which is fine. But it was like a 1%, 2% that were likely to be women who would have families that would bear children. And it was like they didn't like being the odd ones out. They felt like something else was needed for them, but I didn't know how to give it to them, and I tried to help them help each other, and that never really worked as well. The camaraderie or brotherhood of women doesn't really exist. Sisterhood is different. Women look at each other differently to how high-achieving men look at each other. I didn't really understand about that when I was just coaching towards personal training goals and personal, but it turns out that men and women are very different, and we have different drives, different goals. Now, there is somewhat of a spectrum of more masculine men and less masculine men, and more masculine women and less masculine women, and more feminine, both sides as well. But it doesn't make sense to be bringing women into a program where they're objectively much more likely to be unhappy. They're objectively much less likely to be successful. It's someone else's job and role to build the program that women need. And I don't really understand motherhood. I don't really understand a lot of the things that a woman goes through. I think they're, you can see in nature that the female of any species is significantly different to the male. They behave instinctively very differently. They see the world differently, and that's okay. I know the male experience, and I'm good at helping males to become elite and to be able to transform themselves from, to be able to explore into that other 50%. And it's what I love to do. And so there's another group that I'm looking to work with as well. There's the ones who understand this philosophy and are really willing to risk $9 to understand more about the philosophy and to be able to get support to develop these 9 areas of genius, that any of which can be monetized and any of which can increase your ability to be employed if you want to have a job. It's not a commitment that you have to be entrepreneurial, that you have to travel the world, but it's an opportunity that maybe you could learn from some people who've done those things, and maybe you would go to a physical location somewhere around the world. But those who are like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to risk it. I'm ready to actually transform myself. And at the moment, I don't have significant resources, or I'm not ultra rich, but I'm ready to change. I'm ready to test myself. I'm ready to try something different. I'm ready to invest 4 years of my life to see if I can become a successful business owner, to see if I can create a solution that changes the world for better. Now, I've worked with hundreds of men in that capacity. There were over 100 who opened gyms in my first business, and it's been more online fitness businesses after that. Ben Patrick was the best of those. He's making around $2,000 a month online. When we started together, I mentioned that not to brag, because he's the most successful online coach in the world, and legit athletic training at least. Doesn't do paid ads, like legit organic, change the world with a system. I don't mention that we work together through the start to brag. I mention it because I would like to work with other men who would have a big vision for their future. I know I can speak to any man and expand their vision for the future. That's what happens when I talk to men. I can always see something much brighter for them than they can see for themselves. And understand sometimes that's difficult for a man to see, because if you look in the mirror and you see someone excellent and with infinite potential, and you're not used to seeing that person, then it's scary, because then you have to act towards that. And Ben Patrick was the one that was able to act towards excellence, much more than I've been able to, much more than any man I've met. Yeah. But recently it's all kinds of businesses that we're working with. One of the men in the network is a lawyer from Luxembourg. He recently resigned from his job. He's still working it as he phases himself out as they do in those kinds of corporate roles. But his first sale was a 15,000 euro sale. And to someone who already makes a lot of money, it's not necessarily a big deal. But it means when you're making that money for yourself, it means that you can replicate that process. It means that you can scale that process. It means that you can live anywhere in the world and receive that money versus be in a certain place at a certain time. Another man who works in finance from Ireland has made hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, euros, just had $1,000 sale. He's like, yeah, I can feel more confidence. I feel more energy. I'm making moves. If you would like to be part of that type of environment, then that's a bigger investment. At the moment, it's $2,000 to be part of that network, and there are other options if you'd like more support. $2,000 for the year. It's a 4-year program. You can't expect to completely transform yourself in 12 months. It's taken you however old you are, plus a little bit of time in the womb, plus some genetics to become who you are right now. And if you would like to be significantly different from that, you can't expect that change to happen in 12 months. Yes, people come in and they make money soon. Some of them are able to leave jobs quickly and such. But it's the deeper transformation that's most important. And the younger you are, the more neuroplastic you are, the more possibility there is that you do that quite quickly. We see this with the juggling as well. It's just facts. There are men around 20 years old who go hard with the juggling. They work really hard at it, and they can 5-ball juggle within 3 months. Now, I learned it gradually over years, and I didn't have that high expectation for myself. Eventually, I learned to 5-ball juggle. Still not sure if there's anyone in the network who's gone past me on the juggling, even though it's just part of my training. I'm not a juggler. There are a lot of better jugglers. I'm not a guitarist, but I play some guitar. The fun is in your personal experience of doing the thing. It's much more fun than watching someone else be the best in the world. I don't really care about seeing what the best in the world are doing any more than it helps me to become a better coach, become a better person, and be able to pass on better things to others. But younger men are able to learn to juggle faster, which also means younger men are able to learn to do social media faster or learn to develop their sales skills faster, etc. But they have to be able to be coached, and I have to get out of the mindset of I'm entitled to this and someone's just going to give me this master key where I don't have to work hard and I don't have to really change anything. I don't have to be a great person and still money is going to come into my life. That is not going to happen. That does not happen. If you're hoping for that, and if that's what you're watching this video for, then I'm sorry, but it doesn't work like that. And so the middle program is about building that exceptional business and really learning the fitness system, getting yourself in the best shape of your life, being held accountable to be exceptional athletically. And that can open up the possibility. Once you only need to be making a couple of $1,000s a month. If you can do that consistently, if you can get that set up direct debit, then you could put yourself indefinitely wherever you want in the world. Villages at the moment, $2,000 a month, you're able to live, food, accommodation, internet, and still have a little bit to spare. Some of them. I wish that opportunity existed when I was a young man. I would have taken that opportunity. Maybe it would have saved my mother some heartache. Maybe there would have been some other men around in my community that I could look up to as role models. I was looking for a role model who was married, in great shape, and had a great business in my 30s. And at the time, I couldn't find one. There were great men who were in shape and had great business, or that were happily married and in great shape, but I couldn't find anyone at the time who had the three. And it's still not that common, even with the internet opening us up to each other. Now I'm putting the challenge up to another level of being willing to build these 9 geniuses as well. These 9 types of genius. That's what worked for me. That's what excites me for the future, is how good can I get in music? How much can I learn and experience, enjoy jamming and drumming and taking on these new things? And I know it needs to be in the villages. Like, you can do it via Zoom and you can watch the lesson on YouTube and stuff, but that's not it. When you're in the same room and it's happening, it's a beautiful thing. I played music for the first time with my children the other day. We played for an hour in the lounge room together with Jay Top. He's been building online businesses for 10 years. He's 24 and he really started when he was 14 and he's been able to generate millions and millions in business online. But he also plays guitar and I love that he plays guitar. He's better than me and he played in the church band. Not that it's a competition. It's great when someone's better because it means they have something else to give that I don't have. You can't give what you don't have. So the game is to increase your capacities so that you have more to give. And it's fun. Get in there and have fun. I understand that at the moment, you might struggle even with the idea of having fun. You might struggle with the idea of like, what if I'm the worst musician in the room and we're all doing music? What if we're going around the room singing improvisationally? And I don't know how to sing. I haven't sung. What if you just let that go? What if you let that be joy of like, all right, I'm just going to let loose here. We can giggle about it later. Maybe it's going to be brilliant, but let fly. I was unable to do that. The travel and all those adventures helped to unwind some of the levels of anxiety that had been installed into me during that 50% education when I was completely free or much freer, traveling through Latin America, hitchhiking, sleeping on floors, meeting new people along the way. I experienced more freedom. I experienced more of myself. I want that for you, but I want more of it for me. I still want more of it. So the only way it gets better now is if you can come and play. I want men to come and play. So those who are willing to risk the $9, I'm also inviting you. I would like to have an experience with you. If you're better than me at something, I will invite you. I might fly you out myself to come and experience the villages, to come and be in the location that I'm in so that we can have a language exchange or so we can have a knowledge exchange of some kind, a genius exchange. I love teaching. If you're willing to learn, that's great. Not everyone's ready to make a lot of money. That's okay. I think you should. I think it's probably a good idea to go and make a bunch of money. But the cool thing is about what we're doing is that it's very likely, it's very possible that someone could have no money and have this exceptional kind of quality of life. If you're able to give yourself the joy, give yourself the experience. We've got the physical locations. I've paid many months of accommodation to other men to be in the villages for various reasons while they develop themselves. It's not about the money. It's about finding men who are willing to do the work on themselves to be geniuses. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. I understand that this is not something that's being spoken about on the internet. There is no push towards being a Renaissance man, towards being a polymath, having exceptional ability across many areas. I'm not saying that I'm one. I'm saying that it interests me to step into that, to challenge myself and see where I can get to. I love learning new things. I love being taught new things. I love refining the things that I already know how to do. I do still have some resistance around some things of like, oh yeah, probably stay away from that one. I'm probably going to look like an idiot over there. But much less now, less and less. And it's fun to take those layers away. I guarantee you, you will love taking those layers away and experiencing that other version of yourself that's less fearful, that's more optimistic for the future. What if you knew your children were going to grow up in abundance, pure water, natural food, around others who are highly educated, who had fun, where there was a high degree of safety? I don't know if it's possible. It doesn't exist today, to my knowledge, but it interests me. All independent, not a commune, not poor, no one held. Go where you want. Go to the locations you want. Each location is different in its own way. There's currently a list of 20 locations that people want to develop. I want there to be 12 really high quality locations that are connected to each other. But I'm encouraging anyone who's got land to get it to a point where people can come and visit. Worst case, you use it as Airbnb. Best case, it becomes a place that transforms the lives of whoever you want to transform. If you want to bring women and children, girls, do what makes sense to you. The villages can be used for whatever they need to be used for. My personal path is the development of other men and children. What if we could? What's the alternative? What else are we going to do? To me, this is what seems interesting. I don't know why. It doesn't seem like people with money want to do things like this, but it doesn't matter. There will be some other people who understand what I'm talking about here and will risk the $9 or will want to have a conversation. I'm willing to have a conversation with anyone who understands what I'm talking about here, or anyone who has questions about it, or anyone who has suggestions about it. Because it's happened. This thing is built. Be optimistic for the future that you can have. It's not for everybody because everyone doesn't choose it. Not everybody wants what I'm talking about here. It's fine. Appreciate you listening to this. I appreciate your feedback. Look forward to the journey together into athletic excellence and the other 8 genius types as well. The other 8 areas of genius, the other 8 intellects. I'm going to make more videos about each of them. It's a beautiful journey. Please share your thoughts, share your comments, ask questions, and consider sharing it with one other person who might get some value out of it or is going to drop some great trolling for entertainment value. Till next time.